Oh, look, we're live.
Hey, look
What's
at
it?
us on a Sunday, and it's raining.
I know. This is the first measurable precipitation we have had in Kalamazoo, Michigan in 4 weeks.
Yeah, I
We
think
haven't
it's
had literally a drop of rain. So have been enjoying that. It's a little chilly, so I've got my sweatshirt and my hat on because and it was, for all you Coloradans out there, you as a former Coloradoan, you get used to living in the dry. It never feels quite right having lived and grown up in Michigan, but your brain doesn't start to melt. As a Michigander in Michigan, when you go 4 weeks without rain, your brain starts to melt. It's the
yeah,
weirdest thing.
your brain
Yeah,
gets crispy like the grass.
like the grass.
Hmm.
So, oh look, Otis is out. I'm looking out right now because Otis is in my yard right now. Hey, big fat Otis. Otis is the woodchuck that has a huge burrow right along my back fence, and I don't do anything about it because he's so fat and cute. And I know everybody's like, you should do something about that. I'm like, no.
Should I?
So anyway, and how was your day?
My day was good, Jenny. My aunt Julie is turning 70 next week, and so we're going to be out of town. So we took her to high tea Grand Rapids, and we had high English tea. And we didn't get high, which would have been second best, but we ate some awesome tiny crustless sandwiches and pastry and drank tea. And I wore a hat because I'm a lady or present as one.
You are. I wore a slutty skirt
Mm-hmm.
because
Super
I'm a
slick.
lady too. You just as you said high tea, I'm like, my gosh, that would be a hilarious take on that. Would be like high tea where you get like cannabis based tea and a bunch of munchies,
Oh yeah, no, because one of my coworkers were like, "You're gonna drink tea and eat a gummy," and I'm like, "Oh, I wish."
That's what I'm talking about. I'm like, oh, you mean high tea?
High Tea, yeah. So it was fun. It's a cute place. It's on Wealthy Street. It's called High Tea Grand Rapids. It's on Wealthy Street, and they do like a traditional English high tea with your own little teapot, and everything's super pretty. It's super girly. Super girly. And Jenny and I thought that the pastry was good and the sandwiches were good. There was only one thing we really didn't like, and that was the brownie. We thought everything else was aces.
I thought it was good. If you are somebody that has an aunt or a grandmother, they must do huge business on Mother's Day. Jesus.
Oh, I probably have to like book it like years in advance. But
Some
yeah,
sort
it's
of
one of those
mother
yeah,
daughter or mother gay son event, then this is what you absolutely want to be doing.
exactly.
If you're a retired teacher, this is literally, and you don't feel like getting drunk, this is your place.
I
So,
was gonna say, if you don't want to get drunk, this is the other thing. I was like, I'm sure that place was 50% retired teachers.
oh, absolutely. Joe Peters is with us. Hi, love. Joe Peters, hibbity, bibbity, hibbity. Yeah, I'm saying that right. Bibbity. Hello.
Yeah. So anyway, it was fun and I liked it.
Good. Yeah, I did too. That is Get High Tea in Grand Rapids, right on Wealthy Street. Awesome. Good digs. We got the whole high tea, which is $37, which gives you the tea and the whole tier of snacks.
Mm-hmm.
They had a little variety of the little triangle sandwiches with no crust.
No crust.
That's so sophisticated.
Very
And
much.
good,
Get your
yummy
own pot of
stuff.
tea. Get your own pot of tea. You get like a bunch of like little beautiful pastries, a scone with butter and jams, and their little sandwiches. And yeah, like you said, it's 30. But you could do like just tea or just tea and pastry if you want to go a little less expensive. But I say go for the full thing. You're there.
Go big or go home.
And there's like 7 or 8 different teas to choose from. So
yeah, it's totally awesome.
I enjoyed it. 100%.
I had a green jasmine tea, which was delicious.
I had a black pearl rose petal tea. It was awesome.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That is completely awesome. So here we are on a Sunday after having enjoyed a fun tea together. And we're doing book talk today, which is fun. So we are, yeah. And we are specifically book talking. I'm going to bring it up here so you can see it. Oh, I'm going to get rid of my banner back here in the back. The book we're talking about is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus.
Hey, Bonnie. There we go.
Yep.
Cool.
And I can't remember who who told me about this book. I cannot remember, and I apologize if it was you.
It wasn't me. You're the one that told me about it, and then I had to read it.
I can't remember where I stumbled across this book, but really, as a chemistry teacher, I loved it, and as a not chemistry teacher, as a woman, I loved it even more. So let's kind of walk through this a little bit. There's a picture of Bonnie Garmus there on the right. Fun fact about Bonnie Garmus, who is the author. This is her debut novel, and she wrote this at 66, but we'll get to that in a second. So before we started today, if you get the audiobook of this, read it, listen to it all the way through, including the interview. There's about a 30-minute interview with Bonnie Garmus after, and it's really worth your time. The interviewer just kind of asks her about some questions about the book itself, and this is one of the things that Bonnie Garmus said during the interview. It's a Chinese saying that it's women hold up half the sky. If the sky is falling, ask yourself why. And that's a question we'll actually come back to. And I think it's an important thought to start any review for this particular book. So here's Bonnie Garmus, a former copywriter. She was a copywriter for years, who had thought about writing a book, attempted to write a book, wrote a book, had it rejected 98 times, kind of stepped aside for that, and then started writing Lessons in Chemistry. And then once she wrote this book, it was so popular amongst the publishing world that there was actually a bidding war for this book. Wow. Yeah. So began writing this novel at age 64, published it at age 66, first published in 2022. And again, she is a former copywriter. And as she says in the interview, she's not a copywriter anymore.
She doesn't have to do that anymore.
She does not have to do that. She which I think was interesting, and she said this during her interview as well, is that she had a bad time at a meeting. She was sitting through a meeting and really not enjoying it. And then after that meeting, decided maybe it was time for her to start really working on this book. She'd had the idea for this book and then decided that this is something that she wanted to pursue. And I think that's really great. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in a minute, for answering some questions that you came up with, Anne, about the story, is these social contrasts, the social constructs that limit people, that limit humans in terms of reaching their potential. So, but like I said, we will cross that bridge soon enough. Okay, the cast of characters. The main character is Elizabeth Zott. And what's interesting throughout the book is that she's never referred to as just, rarely referred to as Elizabeth. It's usually Elizabeth Zott or Miss Zott.
Or Zott.
Or Zott, yes. She's a research chemist. She's a television personality, and she is the protagonist. She's also Mad's mother, Mad Zott, her daughter. Calvin Evans, who is a star chemist at the Hastings Institute, where Elizabeth also works, and Elizabeth's soulmate and Mad's dad. And really becomes sort of a driving force in the book, and one of the driving forces in Elizabeth's journey, so to speak.
Oh, also, before we go any farther, there will be spoilers.
Yes, spoiler alert. Sorry, I was going to try to make my hand do like the light where it says spoiler alert.
Oh, spoiler. Yeah,
Yeah, so if you're not interested in knowing about this book, you want to read it yourself, fantastic. Mm-hmm. And if you're interested in knowing more, just so you know, this book can be hard to read. Oof. So it will make you feel a little better to listen to our review and decide if this is something that you want to delve further into, because there are many moments that I had to step away from this book.
Yeah, me too. That I'm just like, I can't read. In fact, a couple times where I wasn't sure I was coming back to it. Even though I thought it was a very good book, I'm just like, oh.
Makes your tummy hurt sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
So, all right. So Harriet Sloan, Elizabeth's neighbor, who ends up being, and Elizabeth is a character that doesn't really have friends. So Harriet becomes a very important force in Elizabeth's life. Fran Frask, who is a complicated woman in this story, works in the Human Resources Department at Hastings Institute, and she is not Elizabeth's friend. I would say eventually becomes her friend, but ooh, that's a bumpy road. Yeah. Wakely, a minister, Calvin's former pen pal, and who befriends Mad, the little girl, again becomes a really important driver in the story. Walter Pine, producer in Elizabeth's cooking show, Supper at 6, and her friend and really Walter, other than Harriet, becomes probably Elizabeth's best friend. At least in his he believes Elizabeth is his best friend.
Right.
Even if Elizabeth, acknowledges that or not. Dr. Mason, who is a surprising character in this story. I actually really like his character a lot.
Me too.
Yeah, he's an obstetrician and he is a rowing crew captain on a boat that Elizabeth Zott ends up rowing in. Madeline, or Mad Zott, Elizabeth's daughter, who is a precocious and really a great observer in this story. My favorite character in the story is 630, which is Elizabeth's dog, and the greatest dog in the history of literature, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah, and then Dr. Gennady, who is essentially, as you said, Elizabeth's boss, a humongous bag of dicks, and he's the foil. Like in a professional wrestling competition, he would be the heel of all heels.
Yes, and there's a lot of men in this book, and not many of them are good guys. This book is full of bags of dicks,
and full of bags of dicks in a society that promoted
bags of
bag of dick. Like, one of the things I thought was interesting in the interview is that Bonnie Garmus actually expresses sympathy for Gennady because she felt like he never was going to be. He had no choice but to be this. Which I thought was interesting.
That is interesting and kind.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I feel like being kind.
Fair enough. All right. And so shall we get to these questions that you have listed? And we'll go ahead and post them here. I'm going to go ahead and put them down at the bottom so people can see them as we go through them. Number one, why do you think Garmus chose chemistry as Elizabeth's profession? You go first.
Well, I assumed that she had some sort of background in chemistry, or because that's what it seemed like. Because chemistry is a character in this book. And I think that part of it was to change. Change is inevitable, and chemistry is all about change. You put things together, things change. You take things away, things change. There's no getting around that, and it's the same in life. But she knew so much about it, and it was such a key, pivotal, just the way the characters spoke about it. It just seemed like, I thought she had a chemistry background. That's what I thought, because otherwise, most people don't like chemistry. I mean, I'm not a big fan. I took a lot of chemistry, and I just thought it was lots of math and magic tricks. So, it's not something that most people like. Most people avoid it. So I just thought it was interesting that she would choose this profession, this subject matter that most people have tried to avoid.
That's fair. I myself love chemistry. It's probably my second favorite science behind the earth, anything earth science or geo-related. But what I love about chemistry is, like, if you have a hierarchy of sciences, it's all math-based. It's the foundation of all science is math. And then you take that next step up and it's physics, because that is the behavior of why matter does the way it does. And then chemistry is everything after that. So chemistry and physics are basically about matter. And, you can't even really talk about biology or the earth sciences unless you have a strong understanding or background in chemistry. And I think it's clever in this story how she uses chemistry. The idea, like you said, that chemistry is change. Change is all about reactions. And pretty much anything in your life is about reactions, whether it's, the reactions that are happening in your own body. But I also think it's about how the characters are reacting with each other. How one character promotes change in another character in some way. And we see that very clearly with Elizabeth, as she has this intense reaction with Calvin. She has this intense reaction with her, getting pregnant and having her daughter. She has this tense reaction with Gennady and Frask and Harriet Sloane and Walter that create not just great change for her, but also great change for all of the other characters in the book. So I think it's such a huge expanse, though. Chemistry is sort of the theme. Look at me using words from Mrs. Shane's science class, but in the end, it's the best way to talk about change in this story, I think.
Yeah. No, no, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting choice. Very interesting. And then when you said later that her parents were, science and math people, or, her mom was a nurse, her father was a scientist, but she, she was a copywriter. So, she had to do her own research then about chemistry, what it was like to be a chemist. And I thought that was interesting, that it wasn't her, like, I used to be a chemist and then I wrote this book, because it almost seems like you have to have, like, like
she said she got very close to her chemistry textbook.
Exactly.
Number 2, and I thought this was a really good, I honestly, I don't know that I really came up with a question for this, but your second question was, what is significant with Elizabeth being self-educated, and why do you think that?
I think 2 things. One, when it allowed her to think outside of the box. She had no parameters other than the ones she set for herself. And she's a very organized woman. You have to be very meticulous and precise in chemistry. So she was meticulous and precise in her own self-education. So that allowed her to, she could think outside of the box, which I think was one thing. And another thing was that here was a woman, a girl, who in the 40s and 50s would never have been encouraged in the public education system to become a chemist. And if she hadn't been self-educated, she would not have realized that she could become a chemist. Because that would have been ground out of her very early in public education. So here she was studying exactly what she wanted to do, studying it in a way that fit her personality, and then not having any barriers.
True. Yeah, and I think Bonnie Garmus takes a really interested and backhanded approach to public education. And I don't think it's malicious. I think it's just truthful that public education is very much education by warehousing. And as somebody that is neck deep in this, I think the American model of public education, there's a reason it is suffering so badly now, and it's because it doesn't work with how the world is today.
Right. It doesn't work, and it's often lowest common denominator.
Correct. It's the lowest bidder, the lowest common denominator, and it's only getting lower. And so, as somebody that works in that, it's difficult to be a teacher in this system of education. And you can see, Garmus has definitely has some things to say about it, not just with Elizabeth's lack of formal education, but then her choice to put her daughter in formal education and how damaging it has been for Matt.
Right. I mean, here's a little girl that reads at 4 years old and then doesn't let anybody know because, that would just bring ridicule.
That part of the book where Garmus talks about the fact that we celebrate prodigy, except if you're an early reader. And it's because eventually people are going to be able to do that as well. So we ignore those kids that are early readers and we're like, oh, instead of it being something we celebrate, it's just something annoying,
Right. It's like, great. Now I have to worry about, now you're the smart one.
Yeah. And I thought, well, that's really fascinating because we celebrate musical genius and we celebrate scientific genius and we celebrate creative genius, but we don't celebrate literary genius at that age, just being really literate and being able to not just read, but to synthesize and understand what you're reading to the highest level. So, yeah.
And I'm just going to bring this up because I'm reading a biography now about the Brontes. Emily, Charlotte, Mary, their brother Bronwell, and their father Patrick, and their lack of formal education that they had, and how when they were would have been considered elementary school students, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 4 of them wrote series of books. They created whole worlds, whole continents of stories. And that's that same thing. They were all reading at 4, and then they were all writing their own stories starting when they were like 5 or 6. And this continued through their entire life. So that's one of those things and again, no formal education until they were like in high school or would have been considered high school, because that would have been considered worthy, especially of girls. So.
Yeah. And I look at, I was reading an article yesterday about how learning gains have really fallen off since COVID. And we had an opportunity during COVID to really change the way we educate kids, but because it broke the warehouse model and we need kids to be warehoused in order for parents to be able to go to work, that it didn't work, you know. And that's unless you have the ability and the means to educate your child in a system outside of public education, this is what you're going to get, and you're going to have to, you know, mold your kids and make it work. But that's tough if you don't have that parental support. It really it does not work. So
so I thought it was very significant.
Yeah, I thought so too, and I think you're absolutely right that she gave herself the boundaries, or she gave herself the freedom as a writer by choosing that to allow that freedom for Elizabeth.
Right.
So
yeah, so it was
Okay, question 3. How is the pencil symbolic in this book? Now, if you look at the cover, I'm going to go back to this cover real quick. Lessons in Chemistry. You can see you are looking. There it is. You can see if you are looking at this. Oops, sorry about that. I just want to do an inset. There it is. You can see the pencil in Elizabeth's hair right there, and it's referenced several times during the book of that pencil in her hair. So you're asking, what do you think is significant about the pencil? Go.
Well, one, it's more than one thing. Of course, you know, you need pen when you are in science, you work more with pencil than you do with pen because you have to be able to make corrections. You know, usually you don't even erase, you just draw something, you know, draw a line through. So it allows for more flexibility, and she had to be very flexible, even though her nature wasn't flexible. It was a weapon, and not just like literally it was a weapon, but a weapon in that the pen is mightier than the sword. I mean, there was her and Calvin's journals, you know, those were all written. That's all, you know, that's you get the impression at the end of the book that those journals become extremely important. Again, written in pencil. Her only, when you think of like accessory, is the pencil. She's always got a pencil in her hair. She always has a pencil because you never know when you're going to need it for writing down whatever you want to need, or literally for self-protection.
Yeah.
I just want to say that she should have murdered that one guy because she could have gotten away with it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay. Yeah. And you'll learn about that character early in the book and the significance of the number 2, her use of the number 2 pencil on this DB. So yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And you know, one of the characters asks her about when she's being interviewed by the Life magazine reporter. He asks her about the pencil, and she's like, dude, it's for, you know, for being able to erase, and that she's judgmental to him because he's using a pen.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, I like that. So
yeah. So it's like that's it's much more flexible, you know.
Yeah.
So
for sure. For sure. All right, question 4. You asked about Calvin's death. You basically are asking, how do you think Calvin's death? Oh, spoiler alert. But you know what? You figure out early, right? You figure out within 5 minutes of the story that something has happened to Calvin. He's not in the picture when we start the story, so you know something has happened. So how do you think Calvin's death affected the trajectory of Elizabeth's life?
I think in going all the way to the very end, I think through his death, she gets to be more significant as a scientist. I think if he hadn't died, even if they had never married, she would still be, her ideas would still be Calvin's ideas.
Agree. Oh, absolutely.
And I think so that's going all the way to the very end. I mean, she has to go through this long journey before she gets to this point where she becomes the scientist that she wants to be. And if Calvin hadn't died, she would never have gotten that. She would never, ever, ever have gotten that. She had to go through the whole journey of his death, and her path was because of his death. She would have had a very different path, and she would have always been either Calvin's girlfriend, Calvin's wife, Mrs. Whatever. She would have never been the scientist in her own right. And this because of this, she was able to be that.
Well, and I think even better is I was mowing lawn, my neighbor's lawn yesterday. What I was thinking was she, so here you have Calvin, and we never really know or understand what he was doing other than he was up for a Nobel Prize.
Right.
And when you look at just regular people, we have no idea what he was up to. And most regular people would probably have never known or been impacted by his work. However, once he dies and Elizabeth has to start doing the cooking show, when you consider the influence that she was able to wield towards just regular people, you think about the woman that ends up becoming the heart surgeon, which is awesome.
Love that.
She is able to eventually find her through this lengthy journey, become the scientist that she wants to. But because of his death, she is able to inspire millions of women that would have never known her otherwise.
Right.
So I look at not just her scientific impact that she's working on, but her cultural impact and the message that she's able to send women as a result of his death. So his death actually becomes more impactful for humanity than his life was at that point, even though he was a famous chemist, even though he was going to win Nobel Prizes,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. He would spend his lifetime in his lab with his hi-fi and all of his journals.
And his journals where nobody could figure out what the hell he was doing up there. The cloistered monk chemist. Was it now? There's a name for that. The incel. The involuntary celibate man. It's got a name now. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So number 5, what made the cooking show so popular with women? Go.
Well, it made women feel seen. It's like, here's somebody that doesn't think I'm a vapid idiot. Here's somebody who sees the fact that my job is hard and stressful and I am at my wit's end. And she's offering me a solution to one of my problems. She's taking me seriously while she does it. She's not talking down to me. She's raising me up. And I see her, I see her doing it, and maybe I can do what I dreamed, what I want. And
So-
how many women, I mean, you can't imagine yourself doing it unless you can see yourself doing it. And here she is showing everybody, even though she hated the cooking show, but she showed her, she was showing all these women what it was to not be what society expected you to be and be successful and smart and appreciated.
Cool. So for those of you just joining us, we are talking about Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. And we are just answering our 5th of several questions here. What was the cooking show so popular with women? And I would agree. Again, that Life magazine reporter that's in the audience is asking why people like it. And it's just that response of, she takes me seriously. And, in 1958, 59, 60, women, especially women that were trying for something other than to be a homemaker or a secretary, being taken seriously was very difficult. And at that time, if it happened at all.
At all. I mean, even, Elizabeth, she was a chemist and she still wasn't taken seriously.
Right. Question 6, what is the role of faith and religion in this book?
I thought this was interesting because Mad has this line that she says to the minister. He's asking her about, she's trying to find more information about her father. And she's like, well, I have faith that we'll find more information. And he's like, I thought you were religious. And she's like, oh, faith has nothing to do with religion.
Yeah, it's a great line. It's a great line by the 4-year-old in the book.
I thought that was a great line because, you can tell in this book that she is disappointed with public education and she is downright contemptuous of religion.
Yeah.
In fact, Elizabeth is an atheist. So
it's very much, and gets a lot of shit for being an atheist, which again, some really great commentary in this book about the idea that you have this system, religion, that relies entirely on faith and yet wants you to abide by it even if you don't believe it. So it's and especially now when we have entered into this weird sort of alt-right Christian nationalist craziness that has overtaken our country. And it's super scary. And one of the things I said is that one of the things about science and religion is they both have faith in common. When Mendeleev was constructing the periodic table, he basically constructed this in a way where he knew these elements belong in these blank spaces. We just haven't discovered them yet. And he had the faith to say, we're going to discover these elements. These exist.
Yeah, I know they're out there.
Yeah. And so there's this idea within science that, we don't know this, but we're going to know it. And that, again, faith and religion. I remember our dad used to say that when we were kids, don't let your religion get in the way of your faith. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, so I thought it was, and of course, religion comes off poorly in this book. It does not do itself any favors. So, people of religion and the religions itself do not make themselves look good.
No, and I myself am not a lover of religion either. I think, especially when in a country that preaches the idea of this freedom of expression, this freedom of protest, this freedom to believe in certain things or not, we have zero tolerance for those that don't believe,
right, or believe differently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a tough one, but I would agree that Mad's line about faith is in religion is a big deal. And again, our father's idea that, and again, my idea is that you have to have some faith as being a scientist for sure. So, yeah. Number 7, why do you think Bonnie Garmus included the perspective of the dog 630?
I think she did it because it was a way for us to have more empathy, if that makes sense. I mean, here's this dog who's like who has no bias except for explosives and German Shepherds.
And whatever the creature likes, he likes.
Yeah, he likes. Exactly. So it's like, he's got this very different perspective, which is totally different from the human perspective. And it was just refreshing to see. It's kind of like the education thing. It's out of the box.
Yeah.
Her education was out of the box. 630's perspective is out of the box. And it was just really nice to get a different perspective.
Well, and I like that perspective because I think he's one of the few, not just observers in the book, but has the ability to comment on humanity in a way that something that's not human can comment on humanity.
Exactly. It's kind of like listening to BBC and their take of the world compared to NPR's take of the world. And you're like, oh man, we don't come off as well as we think.
No, and that's why you got to listen to BBC, because when they talk about America, it's really, you're like, oh, that hurts.
That's what they think. So it's kind of like, it wasn't like he was hurting, but he was just very honest. He was honest in a way that you don't have to, I don't have to tell you a lie because there's no reason to.
Yeah. Well, and I love that line at one point where he's listening to everybody lie and he's just like, lies. Like, yeah. No, and he's, like I said, he's my favorite character. 630 is my favorite character in the book from the very get-go. From the second you meet 630, you love 630.
As soon as I found out that 630 survived the accident, I was like, I'm so grateful.
That's the part where I had to A, where he survives the accident, and B, I had to stop listening when he finds the purse, because I'm like,
oh yeah,
it's like, and he gonna get blown up.
I know. I was like, I can't. 630's got to make it.
Yeah. So good job, 630. Spoiler alert: 630's fine.
Spoiler alert. Exactly.
Because nobody likes to see the dog get killed, and you'll especially not like to see 630 get killed. So.
No.
All right. So question 8, why rowing and rowing crew is a big part of this story. So the question you have is why rowing, why crew?
Yeah. And what you told me is that the author rows. She's in a rowing, so I'm like, well, that explains that. Rowing, like chemistry, is super hard. And Elizabeth never seems to take the easy way. She wouldn't let Calvin pave the way for her in any way. She would never give him permission to do that. She didn't accept his proposal to get married, which would have been the easy way out. She didn't do anything easy. She did it the way she needed to do it, the right way for her. And I guess that's another reason why, cruise, because it's hard and it sucks. And I was like, oh, man, that's the last thing I'd want to do. Chemistry and then row.
And then rowing. Yeah, Garmus has some really interesting things to say in her interview about this. I'm a huge fan of the book Boys in the Boat, which is about the 1936 Olympic gold medals crew team from the 8-man crew from the University of Washington. And so I became a little bit obsessed with rowing after reading that book. And though I don't believe I have the mental or physical aptitude to become a rower, it is incredibly hard, not just physically, but mentally. And that's one of the things I learned in reading that book. And she talks a little bit about the fact, and one of the things about this 1936 rowing crew, which is literally considered one of the best 8-man crews in the history of rowing. And they talk a little bit about this group of men, and that one of the reasons that they were so successful is that they liked each other, they got along well, and they were really just a good group of dudes that ended up making this really good crew. And Bonnie Garmus talks a little bit about balance in a boat, because when you're dealing with a racing shell is 24 inches wide. So it's like 65 feet long and 24 inches wide. And
you're in a toothpick. I'm in a toothpick.
You're in a toothpick. And she talks about in her interview about the idea that successful rowing crews have incredible communication and collaboration and balance. And she said the social constructs such as racism and sexism and misogyny do not have any place in a boat. You cannot feel that way about your crewmates and be successful as a crew. And I think that's a really great metaphor for this story, is that you have all of these people that are using all of these social constructs. And I'm going to throw ageism in there because that's something we do a lot. And that's something that Bonnie Garmus has, of course, been able to overcome by writing this book. But if we worked more like a crew, and if we thought about crew and managed to do those things better in our lives, that life would just be better. That's what she's going for in this book. And that's one of the things that Elizabeth learns. Elizabeth, who's always been this rugged individual because she's had to be, becomes part of an 8-man rowing crew at Calvin's urging, but then she continues to do it. And that is a real piece of growth for Elizabeth. So, yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Rowing. I know. Who is your favorite supporting character and why?
Oh gosh, that was a hard one. I have to admit, I had kind of two. One of them was Frisk, the one woman who was at the Human Resources.
Frask, yes.
Because of her arc, I really liked that. And even though she got through this, she made this arc, she still had this bite to her that I really, really appreciated. And then of course 630. I mean, I was an instant fan. As soon as he got up out of the alley and followed Elizabeth home, I was like, I love that dog. So
yeah, 630 was probably mine. And I would say I liked Frask a lot too, for that reason. And I think I really like the way she uses Frask in the book to kind of bring up the idea of female on female violence. And I don't necessarily mean violence in the physical sense, violence in the saboteur sense. That idea that if I'm a female and I trash other females in the company of men, then I'm going to be considered an equal to males, and that never works.
It never works. And also, it's a great way to maintain the status quo. If you can get other women to pull down other women, then you don't have to do anything as a man. You just let them do it.
And so it's surprisingly easy.
Yes. Like, well, I didn't do anything. They were, they're just bitches, that's not, so that's, and I thought it was an interesting view of that sort of perspective.
Right. 100% agreed. So, yeah, probably Frask would be my second behind 630, but maybe for a different reason than what I like the way she uses Frask's character to comment on that, Question 10. What are your thoughts on Okay, and that's actually, we just talked about it. So I was going to ask, what are your thoughts on the commentary about the role of women and keeping other women in their place? And that's what we just talked about.
Right. You know, it's very effective. You see in The Handmaid's Tale, if you've read The Handmaid's Tale, or in the Testaments, it's the same thing. I was like, you got to do a lot less if you can get the people in the group you're trying to oppress each other. Your work is halfway done.
Which is what the GOP is doing better than anybody on the planet right now.
Exactly. Hey, I have a pile of cookies, and that man has 2 cookies. That other guy's got no cookies. He's trying to steal your cookies.
Yep.
Yeah.
So here's one for you, Ann Brothers. This is one I thought of. Do you think about our mom's ambitions before marrying our dad?
Boy, do I got some opinions on that, Jenna Brothers.
You don't have to share them. I have some thoughts too.
I think that my mom is an example of somebody who had a woman in her life tear down her own ambitions before she ever got a chance to express them before she met her dad. So that by the time she met my dad, any ambitions that she'd had already been torn apart. And this was her way out.
Cool. Yeah, I totally buy that.
Yeah.
Totally buy that.
I think my mom should have been running a hospital, had gone or become a doctor. And in a different time and place with different parenting of her own, she could have done that. But she didn't see any women doing this. Her own mother didn't support, not just didn't support her, but outright, sabotaged it, kept her from. And so that by the time she met my dad, that's what the only ambition she could have.
Okay. Yeah. I think that is exactly right. So we're talking about the book Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, and we just answered a bunch of questions. So as far as other thoughts on this book, why this book will piss you off and make you want to stop reading it quickly is that there's just an absolute avalanche of sexism, misogyny. Mrs. Mumford, who is Matt's teacher, who I could not help but think about Miss Zapp the whole time I was reading about Mrs. Mumford. I'm like,
our first grade teacher.
Our first grade teacher, Miss Zapp. Nerd rage. This book is full of weakness and religion and ignorance and a lot of personal tragedy. And that makes it, there's a lot, this book is all about, there's a lot of unfairness. And, how do you deal with that unfairness? Do you quit? Do you give up? Do you become Miss Frask? Do you just work to change? What do you do?
Right.
And yeah. And one of the things that we have to watch and do is watch Elizabeth overcome so much bullshit that you'll want to stop reading it.
Yeah.
But don't.
It kind of reminded me of reading the book Hidden Figures. And I was like, if we had just let everybody in the tent who could help us get to the moon, we probably would have gotten there a decade sooner. But you couldn't help unless you were a white man of a certain type. Yeah. And everybody else was out. And if we had just opened it up sooner, we probably could have made it sooner. Also, funny quote I heard one time. Somebody was saying, when you put a bunch of straight white men in a room to make a movie, you get, or if you put women and minorities in a room to make something, you get, what is it?
You get Hamilton.
You get Hamilton. And if you put a bunch of white men and straight white men in a room to make something, you get Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, that's just it. Well, it goes back to, again, this goes back to rowing. And that idea, like if you have an 8-man crew and you only let half of those rowers row, man, you're going in a fucking circle. You're not going anywhere.
If you don't tip over, you're going to tip over quickly if you get anywhere. And it's the same with the Hastings Institute where Elizabeth Zott works and where Calvin works. That is a poorly functioning, research center because they're so worried about everybody staying in their lane and not inviting anybody into, that could possibly, because they don't look a certain way. So it ends up being, it's just like they're just inventing nylon over and over again.
Over and over again. You just invented nylon. Good job, dummy.
Good job. Good job.
So, and again, that's a great metaphor for if, you know, you have to have all 8 of those oars doing what they're supposed to be doing. And like and this is not just an American thing. This is a worldwide phenomenon, a worldwide issue that we only allow about half of our population to even think about reaching their full potential. Imagine what we could do if we had everybody, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sky's
So
falling.
why you'll like this book? It's a good story. Awesome female role models. 6:30, the dog. It's inspiring. It's thought provoking, and it does have a happy ending. The ending's fantastic.
Yeah, and
So
there's a lot of good food in the book. If you're, I love books with good food. There's a bunch to talk about good food. So
yeah, it's a cool book. I really like it. The good news is Apple TV is making an 8-part series set for an October release with Brie Larson as Elizabeth Zott. So
I am curious.
I'm super curious. I will absolutely get me some Apple TV and watch it because I really would like to see what they do with it. I'm going to go back to this idea, this thought right here. To kind of finish up today is that women hold up half the sky. If the sky is falling, ask yourself why. It's that same idea that you can't be effective if you are only, you know, if you're only allowing half your population to do their thing, which kind of brings us to this thought, have things changed, you know? And I think the answer is yes and no. And Garmus talked a little bit about this interview is the fact that we still have women that are paid less than men. Women are still not afforded the same basic human rights as men, especially if you look at, you know, third world countries, Afghan, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Yemen. Rape is still a tool that is used by men as a form of domination. Women are not given the same educational opportunities as men. Women are held to a different standard when it comes to how they compete and what they are allowed to compete in and what is considered socially acceptable in terms of competition. I'm thinking of women's MMA. People find that absolutely appalling, but they're more than happy to watch 2 guys tear each other's heads off. I thought it was really interesting. One of my favorite sporting events to watch is the Women's College World Series. And Oklahoma just repeated as the national champions. And they are the most fun team to watch because they are just having the best day. They're kicking people's asses and having the best time doing it. And it's considered unseemly because they're women and they shouldn't be. They should be, you know, quiet and submissive and, you know, reverent.
Be polite.
And they're like, fuck that, man. If the men can do it, why can't we? And I'm like, exactly. Let these guys, they don't get a ton of spotlight. Let them have the most fun ever. It's a blast. Women must still fear walking or running alone. Women are held responsible for men being able to control themselves. And I'm specifically talking about dress codes that are implemented to keep women from being a distraction to men. Males can coach women's sports, but it's rare to see women afforded opportunities to coach men's sports. So, you know, yes, we have made progress, but we have not made enough progress, in my opinion. So
No. These are just a couple of them, you know.
These are tiny little drop in the bucket examples.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I know. So anyway, there you go. The book that we were talking about today is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I'm going to go back real quick so you can see the cool cover. It's this awesome sort of pinkish orange color. You should read it. If you're a dude, you should read it too.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. You should definitely read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I mean, I read it twice, so it must be pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good book, and I think if you are, you know, if you're a woman, read it. Make your daughters read it. Read it to your daughters, because I think it appeals. This is a book that should be read to almost any age group. So.
I agree. Yeah. Next book we're going to pick is going to be more fun.
Yeah, well, that's fun and festive. Like, I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, I thought this was a kind of a Brainiac. This is a Brainiac talk on this particular book.
It was. We're super smart today, Jenny Brothers.
Yes, this was the smart and our smart, dumb fun. We had a smart talk about a smart book. We're smart.
We're smart. So, Jenny, what are you doing this week?
Well, Anne, on Wednesday, you and I will be driving our mother and father out to Colorado for the memorial service of our Uncle Norman, my mom's brother Norman, who passed away back in, I believe, February. And the festivities are this coming weekend. So we are going to be in a car with mom and dad. Now, we have had some requests that we live stream with our parents, some of what we are seeing and doing on the way out while we're there and on the way back from Colorado. And I think we will, and I think we'll absolutely do that. So,
I think we should totes do that.
Yes. Yes. So, yeah, you might be seeing a little bit of us, not on our usual Sundays in the coming week because, and we have some tough news. The tough news is that Casa Bonita doesn't look like it's going to be open while we are in Colorado.
I know. Not a lot
That's
to do.
disappointing.
Yeah.
If you're interested, the New York Times wrote an article this week about Casa Bonita and its reopening. And the fact that Trey Parker and Matt Stone dropped $40 fucking million on the revamp of that restaurant.
Oh, yay.
And it took them over a year to find the right color of pink to repaint the outside.
Oh, yeah, because
They went through like 40 versions of that pink.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because you know they were going to get letters if that pink wasn't right.
It's the wrong pink. Well, I just think it's interesting. They kind of go through a laundry list of some of the shit they had to fix. And it's like, how is it that nobody died either A, eating there or B, working there? Because they were talking about the fact that the only exit of the pool was like this 30-inch wide tunnel that they had to shimmy through, and it emptied into an electrical room. Like there was like surrounded by electricity. There's these kids climbing out of this pool tunnel in this fucking electric room. I'm like, how is that just electrocuted and dead? And oh God.
So funny.
And the fact that they were dumping grease from their kitchen into the wastewater treatment water, and you're just like, And I guess the place should have blown up because they had ruptured gas lines, and oh yeah. So great.
So great. Taking out half of Colfax Avenue right there.
I don't know if that would have been so bad. You know, and that would be very fitting for Casa Bonita to just fucking blow up.
Just fucking blow up and leave a huge mess. Still happen.
So yeah, no, they have like an actual chef, like an executive chef, and like they have ovens now, not just steamers and microwaves.
I was gonna say, you mean Taco Bell is no longer just making deliveries there?
Oh, you know what? I would love it if they would just give it a Taco Bell. I'm like, yeah, we just pick up from Taco Bell and here's some margarita. I'm like, because the margaritas were always good.
Margaritas and soap IPAs were great. The food was not.
No, usually
that
a trip to
restaurant
Casa Bonita was followed by a trip to the local bathroom before you could get home. So yeah, I'm sorry to say that. No, and you know what this means though? This means that we're gonna as soon as they open it up, we're gonna have to make a special trip to Colorado just to go to Casa Bonita.
You're right, Jay. We're gonna have. I was just thinking. I was like, well, I was thinking I'd never go to Colorado again, and I'll have to go see my family, of course. And Casa Bonita.
So, you know, that's definitely going to be in the works for sure. So anyway, yes, that's what we're doing this week. We are driving out to Colorado with Mike and Cynthia and Dad's box of shoes. So that's amazing. All right. So anyway, we'll see you guys this week at some point. Are we going to do a show in 2 weeks? Well, you know what? Actually, that's going to be tough for me because that will be the 20th.
Yeah.
That's going to be that Sunday. I don't know because that's for those of you that don't know, Jenny is relocating again. This time to Petoskey / East Jordan, and so the moving truck comes the 26th. So we'll see because I have some finished packing to do, and you know I don't know. So hopefully we'll be able to join you guys on the 25th, if not the weekend after that. From beautiful East Jordan again.
Might be something short and fun. So
okay, cool.
All right, Jenny Brothers.
All right, Ann Brothers. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. And again, read the book, Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. And we are out of here for yet another couple of weeks. Peace.
Just a few days.
All right.